Hello, comrades. Welcome back to the program. Oh, okay. Look, I know I'm very late on this episode. Life got in the way, what with school, needing to find a new place to live. I didn't have much time to write a script or do much research in order to get the info I wanted to put in here, so I had to delay it a bit. I know that these are really only excuses, but I can only hope that you'll forgive me as we move on to the next topic. But one more thing before we do, and I know, it's the little things like this that keeps 5-minute philosophy from ever really being 5 minutes, but bear with me for a minute. As I'm sure you've probably noticed by now, I don't have any of the fun pictures correlating to my words in this video. A beautiful commenter said that it was a tad distracting, so I've decided to try experiment around a bit. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments. I'm still trying to figure out how to be a bit more of a unique presentation style, so I'm not just another floating image talking into a void. But without further ado, let's get on with it. This week, we're going to be digging into the idea of causality and how that affects deterministic thought. Now, you may be scratching your head thinking, how can a concept used in everything from physics to Kantian metaphysical examination affect determinism? And you would be right to have that question. Besides the standard answer of all knowledge can relate to the reality in which we live, it has a lot more to do with the consequences causality brings to the table. Now, so far, everything I've been doing has been pretty intro-level stuff, and this certainly is not inherently an intro-level topic. And the only reason I'm even bringing it up is because it's just too interesting to not talk about. So if you don't understand anything, that's fine. Let me know, and I will do my best to answer it in the after-series Q&A. So, what is causality? Well, it is one process or state of being leading to another process or state of being. It's cause and effect. With determinism in mind, causality normally refers to this pretty literally, as how, when I stated before in the first video, if you haven't seen it, I'll chuck the link in the doobly-doo. Determinism holds that the universe can be completely represented as a steady progression of events. And if you knew every variable of the past, you could pretty accurately predict the future. That's all fine and dandy, and hell, you may even be wondering why I was saying that this could be hard to grasp, that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, and that I should just shut up and hurry this whole lecture along because you have a hot date and you're going to be late at this point. To which I say, sit your ass back down there, tiger, I'm not done. See, it's the effects of causality when applied to quantum physics, of all things, that this puts a wrench in the whole idea of determinism. What am I even talking about, and what does, quantum physics have to do with philosophy? Well, the whole area is pretty experimental and confusing, and honestly, I don't even really fully grasp what I'm about to explain. But I can try to make this whole thing as simple as possible, and I'll even throw in a fun little video detailing the whole experiment I'm about to lay out down in the description. Our story here starts with a pretty famous experiment you've probably heard of, the double slit experiment. You have a gun that fires individual atoms between two slits that leads to a screen at the back. On that screen, it records where the atom hits. You block one slit off, and as expected, the screen lights up right behind that open slit. Problem starts when you open up both slits. When you do this, the screen lights up in much the same way you would expect to see if you did this with light. The screen starts to show a striped interference pattern all along the screen, not just the two areas right behind the slits. Mind you, we're firing only one atom at a time here, so how is it possible that you get a pattern you would expect to see from a wave interfering with itself when all you're doing is firing a single atom one at a time? And you can try to be cheeky here too and try to spy on it, see where it's going. But when you do that, something crazy kind of happens. They start to do exactly what you're expecting them to do. What was once a striped interference pattern collapses back in on itself to become just the two areas right behind the slits that you would expect to see if you were thinking about this in any standard rational way. It's almost like the atom decided to react the way you would expect it to, only when we were watching it. And when we're not observing it, it's much like it didn't know what it wanted to do, so it just did every possible combination of things at once. Now, of course, the atom itself isn't thinking at all, but what's really happening is that through the simple act of observing, we're simply collapsing the options available to just the two slits, to just the 50-50 chance of the atom going through the top slit or the bottom one.
Well, that was a long and cool story and all, but what does that have to do with determinism, you nerd?
weirdly mean internal interpretation of the viewer that's kind of rude to have the more I think about it. It means, at least as of now, the universe has at least some properties that act in a truly random manner. We cannot predict how each individual atom will react when they're not observed, even though all standard logic dictates that we should be able to. How does this play out in reality? Well, let's go back to the first example I gave about the ice cream way back in the first video. In this example, we had a small child who basically had to choose between buying ice cream or buying cards. In that example, we came to the conclusion that due to what we would now describe as causality, the young child really never had a choice. They were always going to buy the cards. But because causality is effectively a function of events across space-time and is something that is just observed, it is also limited to what we can express about reality itself. Causality reduces reality into a linear function, one that is collapsed seemingly by the act of making a choice. In this case, buying the cards over the ice cream, or making an observation watching the atoms through the slits, in effect the action of observing or choosing something collapses all other possibilities into what we actually observe. The implications of this realization are, as I said before, it seems the universe still has a few things we can only currently describe as random, all hiding away. This puts us in a bit of a damper on the deterministic idea of being able to measure all things and predict the future with that information. And while it is still very possible that in some time in the future we'll find a way to properly measure these occurrences, as of now I don't know of a way to do so. So for now, it's fair to say determinism, and more specifically hard determinism, holds a few flaws. But that's okay. Not every philosophical position is a hard bastion of certainty. As a species, we still have much to learn about the world that we live in, and will always continue to develop our theories and positions to match our material reality. Also, I think it's important to note that this whole idea is really heavily predicated upon utilizing an occurrence that we see really only in the quantum state and superimposing it into our normal lives. We are utilizing a state of physics and kind of just pushing that onto a philosophical model. So definitely take everything I've said here with a bit of salt. But even so, the idea that something could be truly random at all still throws a deterministic worldview into some question, a question that I don't really think is answerable yet. Anyway, that's all from me on this topic today. I feel the video is already way longer than I would have liked it to be, but there was a lot to cover, no real way around it. As always, let me know of any questions or suggestions in the comments below or at my Twitter at @nnotapplicableA, and I hope to see you all again real soon. Bye!